welcome back to the podcast. This is Danielle.
And this is Paola.
And today we have a good episode for you. We're talking about the 2014 independent horror film Lyle. It was a good one. We decided that for June, since it's Pride Month, we would try and find some horror films with LGBTQ plus directors, and that was one of the ones that we found. So before we start, like always, we're gonna read you a little description of the movie.
Not spoiler free.
Very important. There will be plenty of spoilers in our discussion of Lyle. Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, go watch it and then come back. Because, come on, you gotta come back.
But if you've seen it, why don't you hang around for a Lyle?
Good one.
Good one, James! Okay, so Lyle is a 2014 American drama film written and directed by Stuart Thorndike. The film tells the dramatic story of a mother grieving over the death of her toddler. The film stars actress Gabby Hoffman in the lead role.
So here's the super short plot synopsis. This is the best I could find. And this is from Tubi, by the way, which is where we watched it. We have a Roku Smart TV, and Tubi is free on there as far as I know. So, yeah, that's where we watched it. And the Tubi plot synopsis is: Leah's grief over her toddler's death turns into paranoia when she begins to suspect her neighbors are part of a satanic cult. So, dun dun dun. So yeah, this was a good little, I don't want to get too much into like what we thought yet, but it was a good little horror film. It was pretty short. I think the runtime was probably only like an hour or maybe a little bit more than that. But since the plot synopsis was so short, I went ahead and did some research on the movie itself, because it is an independent movie. So I thought it was, there must have been something interesting in the making of it. And I found two articles. One's by The Hollywood Reporter, and the other one is by Ravelin Magazine. And I'll leave those linked in the description. So just a few fun facts for you, Danielle, and for you guys.
No, just for me.
Just for you. The director herself, and then also just other outlets that I saw talking about the movie, referred to it as the lesbian Rosemary's Baby, which I could totally see. I was getting the vibes. I've never seen all of Rosemary's Baby. I think I watched chunks of it in my life. I've never seen the whole thing. Actually, we should probably watch it for the podcast, but that's later on down the road. But yeah, so she referred to it as lesbian Rosemary's Baby, which you could definitely see the inspiration on there. So this movie premiered at Outfest in LA in 2014, and Outfest is an annual film festival that features LGBTQIA plus filmmakers and storytellers. And I'd heard of Outfest before. I used to intern for another film festival, and there's this film festival circuit, and they were part of the circuit, I think, but they are a smaller film festival. But they're pretty cool. And then this is Stuart Thorndike's first feature film. So she's made other short films in the past, but this is her first feature film. And something else that I learned about this movie was that it was made with a micro budget, which doesn't really specify how much money they spent, but one could assume that it was very little money. And it was also filmed in 5 days, which is really impressive, because that's not a lot.
Yeah,
pretty nuts.
I have no acting. No, I have no acting experience or talent or anything. But when I've
talent or anything,
when I've tried to be in your little short films, I always mess up a lot of things. So I can understand that that's nuts.
Yeah.
It took us hours to film our little intro, just so you know.
Yeah.
So
just that's a good point of reference. Obviously, it does not compare to the scale of a feature film, but just filming our little intro took us like hours, so pretty crazy. 5 days for a whole feature film. That's pretty impressive. She was also interviewed in The Hollywood Reporter, or no, I think it was in Ravelin magazine, specifically about her approach to independent filmmaking and independent distribution. And she said, a quote of hers that stood out to me was, she said, "I had seen so many of my friends have features in major festivals, get a lot of buzz, get distribution, but it took a couple of years, then you'd forgotten about the movie. I just wanted to get it out there and be a little more punk about it, about how we got it out there, because that's how we made it, cheap and scrappy." So I thought that was really cool. From what I read, also, she released the movie herself on her own website. So even though the movie was very successful at Outfest, she got offers for distribution from, different companies. She turned them down and she said, no, like, I want to release it on my own terms, which I thought was really badass.
That is.
Yeah, so those are just a few facts about Lyle. And yeah, now we're gonna jump into it. Danielle, what can you tell us about our protagonist, Leah?
So Leah is the main character.
Otherwise known as the protagonist.
She's in a relationship with June. I don't know if it says that they're married or not, but they're partners.
So. Yeah, actually, I guess we don't know for sure if they're married or not, but they're partners. They live together.
Yeah. And they had, I don't know why I'm getting into the whole plot. You asked me about one character. Anyways, Leah is shown as being suspicious and sort of like in denial, according to her therapist, about what happened with her daughter Lyle, who died. Mm-hmm. But it turns out that she was right to be suspicious.
Yeah.
So
it's true. My notes, I wrote that Leah is a pregnant mother who just moved into a new apartment with her wife June. I just assumed they were married, but maybe they're not married. I noticed June's technically not the protagonist, but in many ways she could be the antagonist. Mm-hmm. That from the very get-go, like, June seemed a little bit off.
Oh, yeah.
Especially, like, after Leah tells her that she's having a girl instead of a boy. Mm-hmm. So that is, like, one of the very first things that were shown in the beginning when they're looking at that apartment that they eventually end up renting. So that's something that kind of, like, at first, like, upon first impression, I was like, oh, this movie's going to be about this couple, and, like, they're the protagonists, they're the main characters, and some sort of, like, force of evil is going to try and mess with them, Mm-hmm. But then, of course, like, right off the bat, you're kind of, already clued into the fact that there's something about June that's, like, not quite right. Mm-hmm. So, I was a little bit surprised by how quickly that happened. And then, as far as the antagonist, like I already mentioned, I think, I guess, at the end of the day, it would end up being June, because she's the one that made some sort of pact with the devil or with the cult or something, mm-hmm. to give up her firstborn son was the original agreement from what I gathered, but she ended up having 2 daughters, and it was like a 2-for-1 special where the demon was like, all right, you didn't have a son, but I guess I'll take your 2 daughters, because everybody knows 2 women for a man. The understood agreement.
I like that they brought it, that one, like, throwaway line, well, not throwaway, but, like, that one line ended up that I think June was, like, a record label person, from what I can understand, and she had 2 ladies under her, like, record label that were not getting paid as much as this single dude. Mm-hmm. So they said that, like, line that could have just been a line in the movie that didn't mean anything, but it ended up, mm-hmm. coming around and being the whole reveal. Yeah.
The reveal. That's true. That was an interesting way in which they kind of put that thought in your head as the audience. I thought that just because of the nature of the way that everything unfolded, like, even though June was the antagonist, they never really show her doing anything purposely, like, negative to Leah. But it's just the fact that Leah is, like, already in a heightened state of, like, paranoia, that honestly, like, they don't need to do much to her. Like, she was already freaking out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she was an interesting antagonist in that way, in that, like, even though she's the cause, like, there are other forces at play that are the ones that are messing with the main character.
Yeah. When I was thinking about who was the antagonist, I feel like that's the thing of this movie, that it's so, like, up to your interpretation, or, like, vague. I feel like Taylor is the middleman between the devil and others, I guess. Especially, too, because in the very end of the movie, you see the manager of the building, I guess, Karen, this old lady who can't have kids. You see Taylor trying to get Karen to leave because Karen wanted to take Leah to the hospital because Leah told her, hey, I don't want to go back in there. And Taylor, I feel like she, like, convinces Karen with saying, like, oh, didn't you always want children? Or something like that. And then she, like, walks her out of there, like, holding her shoulder. And I was like, oh, is she gonna, like, make a deal with the devil to give Karen a baby so that she, like...
There's a lot of transactions going on there. So I wasn't sure. I was a little confused by that aspect of it because I thought that the baby was for the devil, you know, like, not for Karen. So unless then Karen, you know, took a line of credit with the devil and said, hey, give me a baby, you know?
And then she's gonna pop out a devil baby.
Yeah. I don't know.
I have no idea.
That was a little bit confusing, I will say. But yeah, I see your point about Taylor. I think that because her character was, like, her character being evil was introduced in kind of a very nonchalant way, it didn't really register with me that she was also involved.
Yeah.
Or, like, to what extent she was also involved, but that's a very good point.
I feel like the thing, too, is with the weird pictures of her face, even, like, when she was little, like, you can't see her face. I feel like that was supposed to be, like, she is an evil being, like, from when she was a kid, even, that she can't be photographed.
Yeah.
Like, properly, I guess? I don't know.
I thought she was, for a little bit there, like, I thought she was gonna be, like, a figment of her imagination or something.
Oh.
Of Leah's imagination. Where, like, it turns, you know, it happens in movies all the time. Oh, that person wasn't real or whatever. Fucking Sixth Sense. So I thought it was going to be something like that. But it wasn't. And I was okay with it. But it was just still, like, I feel like so much happened. I mean, we're already getting into, like, the critique of everything. But so much happened that at the end that I was, like, struggling to catch up. You know, like, I feel like it was very, like, just Leah being paranoid for most of the movie, and then, like, bam, 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 like, everything happens at the end without much explanation. So that kind of gets into what I didn't like about the movie, but we can talk about that after.
Yeah. I will say that the movie really tried hard to make you think that Karen was the antagonist.
Oh, yeah. From the get-go.
Yeah, when she's like, you're pregnant?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to be pregnant.
Yeah.
I think the first note I wrote was that the realtor is jealous of Leah's baby.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, she was giving weird vibes, like, from the beginning. And, yeah, I wasn't really sure what it meant. She just read to me as, like, creepy lady. But I wasn't sure why. And then, of course, like, the more we learn about her, you know, inability to have children and the fact that she always wanted children. But I never really saw her doing anything about it. You know, it was just more of a concept that she was creepy and that she maybe potentially was responsible for Lyle's death. But yeah, she was a good like kind of distraction as far
Mm-hmm.
as like getting you to maybe disregard the fact that June's also a little bit sus.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I feel like every time when something like bad was supposed to happen to Leah, there would be a scene before where June said like, "Oh, I'm actually gonna stay late."
Yeah,
So I was like, "Oh, she knows something's up, and she's purposely not being in the house so that something
right.
can happen."
Yeah,
But
that was pretty suspicious. Um, I thought she just was a shitty partner. I was like, it's possible. Or, if I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, that she was kind of dealing with grief in her own way and being detached and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
So,
So the main conflict of the movie is that, well, I guess it's like not for sure spoken, but it's more assumed that June made a deal with the devil slash Taylor slash evilness, something evil, so that she could have success in her career and become wealthy and all that good stuff. But I mean,
bad stuff.
bad
But
stuff.
the good stuff.
The good stuff for badness.
There you go.
And as a result, their daughter Lyle dies, and then Leah is trying to keep her unborn child from being taken, killed, something by the evilness.
Yeah, I think Taken.
I think taken and then killed. I think that
Yeah,
otherwise
I guess
they would have
sacrifice. Yeah,
they would have just taken Lyle otherwise.
Right. Yeah, I think that the conflict itself is pretty simple, I guess. Not simple, but it's easy to recognize
Mm-hmm.
in the plot of the movie. And I thought that there might have been some sort of subplot slash like secondary conflict in regards to Leah like grieving over her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that like from the beginning she thought that something was wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nothing really became heightened until after Lyle died. As far as like, not just obviously, she didn't really believe entirely that her daughter's death was an accident. She thought there was something else at play.
Mm-hmm.
And her like trying to figure out what was at play was a little bit like heightened by her grief and her like, just overall not maybe like a little bit unstable mental state. So
Mm-hmm.
that was another thing that I think kind of really paralleled the main conflict. I don't think that it would have been as impactful had it not been for the whole like grieving aspect of things.
Mm-hmm.
And like not just like her kind of like paranoia about what was going on, but also like her just how fiercely she was like protecting her unborn child because Lyle had passed away and she was still grieving her that loss.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something else that kind of goes hand in hand with the the main conflict or like the horror conflict of the story, which I thought was good. I think that that is one of the things that is good about the movie is like even though the plot itself wasn't like incredibly complex or super fleshed out, like it was effective in kind of pairing like something that's real and like something that's horror and like paranormal to a certain extent and something that's very real, like a really real and raw emotion like grieving someone. So I thought that was cool.
There's a little bit of symbolism, or what I thought was symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing was that I looked up the building they lived in. The number for it was 357, and so I looked it up, and there's some sketchy looking website, but it said that number is a sign of progress and that something may be good for you, but if it doesn't help you in the development of your life, you must cut it off. And so I thought, like, yeah, like they might have kids and kids are good for you, but it's not like they need to be sacrificed to further their career.
Mm-hmm.
Or June's career, I guess. So, I don't know.
I mean,
It could be a stretch, but I don't know.
There's probably something there. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could also maybe, like, be talking about, like, where they are in their lives as far as, like, starting something new. Like, they moved into a new apartment and, like, they're about to have another baby, and like how, you know, all of that seems good if you look at it face value, but obviously there was something much darker underneath. I'll buy it. I'll buy it for $1.
For $1? Okay.
For a whole $1.
Wow. That's pretty good. I was only selling it for 50 cents.
Dang it. Give my money back.
The second thing is that there was the whole thing of that, you know, it's 2 girls for 1 boy, and there's this thing going on throughout the whole movie where Leah keeps finding the toy horse that was Lyle's, and at one point she grabs one and she goes over to a closet and grabs out another one, and I remember at that point you and me both looked at each other and we're like, what the
yeah, what is that? What is that?
I don't know, but the thing I thought of is that she grabs both the horses and, like, puts them down together, and I thought maybe the 2 horses is supposed to be, like, these are the 2 girls that are being sacrificed.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
But definitely. I feel like I could totally see that being connected. I was confused about, like...
like, I have no freaking idea.
I have no freaking idea about, like... Where did the other horse come from? Did she have it already? Did somebody put the second one there? Also, like...
Why?
Why? But also, like, if... Okay, so, a satanic cult was behind everything, right? As far as I can tell, that's a little bit separate from, like... paranormal stuff, like ghosts and stuff like that. So, like, who was doing that? Who was messing with her like that? Was she doing it herself? Was she was trying to convince herself? Or what? But I thought the whole, like, the horse thing seemed like something that they put in to be, like, a creepy thing that happens, but it's never really explained.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that in my list of things that I didn't like. And also, I was like, okay, they're really driving it home with this horse, like, I don't know, this horse thing, and I was like, okay, what does a horse mean? Like, is there any, like, meaning, like, thing that's associated with it that, like, maybe that's, like, why they, like, chose a horse to, like, be the
symbol?
The symbol, but, like, the only thing I could keep finding was that it's supposed to be associated with, like, freedom and stuff, which I can understand, because, like, there's always, like, showing some person, like, hopping on a horse, and they're like, woo! So, but I was like, okay, this isn't freedom, though. They're getting fucking sacrificed to the devil, or evil cult, or whatever.
Maybe it is supposed to be, like, the lack of freedom, like, how trapped she felt in her situation, in her paranoia, in her, like, marriage, maybe? Or a partnership.
I guess so. I mean, the horse was always in... The horse... It was inside of a crib. It was inside of a box. I think she might have found it just, like, laying on the floor, but I'm not sure. But the other 2 times it was inside of something. Cribs kind of looks like a cage. A box is a confined space.
Yeah.
I don't know.
She grabbed one from the closet, too, didn't she? That was so confusing. See, if the horse would have like stood for something, which maybe like it totally doesn't, it's like kind of going over our head a little bit.
Yeah.
Then I would understand why keep bringing it back and why kind of make it a thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a little bit weird. I also have that in my notes for something that I didn't really like. I didn't care for. It seemed like she put it in there for the sake of adding like a horror element. That just didn't really quite fit, and it felt a little bit forced.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I took, like, some time out of my day to search. Like, if you went in my search history, it's just a whole bunch of questions. What does a red horse mean? What's the symbolism? What is the symbolism of a horse? What is the symbolism of a red horse? And like I was getting some bull crap about like the four horsemen and stuff, and I was like, okay, but it's not fitting with what I'm thinking.
With your
like,
fantasy.
what I'm trying to see if anything. Like I'm scraping for little bits of like
something for it to mean something.
Yeah, and like nothing was fitting. Like I was throwing the pasta at the wall and it's falling off every time. So I don't know.
It wasn't sticking. Yeah, I could see that. I honestly didn't even bother because it felt so empty to me that I was like, that is just an attempt. I don't know if it was like a purposeful kind of like way to misguide you as a viewer, as an audience member, to think this is a ghost thing or something like that.
Yeah.
I could see it. Honestly, that is like the most effective way in which it could have been used. Other than that, it was a little bit questionable.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing that I wrote down was that, I guess this isn't really symbolism, but this is just like my train of thought based off of the name. Lyle is usually like traditionally a boy's name, at least from what I like saw when I was looking up like, oh, baby names and whatever. And so it says that Lyle is traditionally a boy's name, and I was thinking maybe June made that agreement, like, beforehand, and that, like, she wanted Lyle to be a boy, and that's why she already picked the name beforehand.
Yeah, but it turned out to be a girl. Yeah, that's a good point. I think that there's definitely something to be said about the fact that Lyle's traditionally, a boy's name. Also, maybe the devil really liked that name, and the devil said, "If you have a kid, you gotta name it Lyle." But yeah, that's a good point.
And Lyle is supposedly the word island. In like I don't remember what it said. I think it said like Scottish or French or something. I don't remember which one it said, but it said that that's what Lyle means is island, which I thought was interesting because in the last movie we reviewed the
Country.
And the antagonist's name was Isla.
That's true.
So
there's a lot of island themed stuff happening.
There was a bit of like foreshadowing in the beginning where it's just Leah and Lyle is like looking out the window with Leah, and then I think Leah starts walking away and she's like, oh, like, come here, or something like that. She's like, come here, Lyle, and she's like, oh, you're gonna make mommy go insane. And then it like is centered on the window. I'm pretty sure it's the window that Lyle falls out of.
Yeah.
And so it's centered on that window, but over, like, on the edge of the frame is Leah and Lyle. And, like, right before they walk away from the window and the window is centered is when she says that you're going to make mommy go insane. And, I when I was, like, watching it originally, I was like, what are they doing here? Like, why are they focusing so much on this window? It was, like, super bright window, and the rest of the room was, like, kind of dingy. I don't know what you want to call it. But, and then they were, like, over in the corner, and I was like, they're trying to say something here, but I don't know what yet.
Yeah.
And then, like, later on when, I think Leah was saying, like, I know I closed this window, and I was like, wait, that's the window that they were focusing on earlier.
Makes you think.
Makes you think. So I had one question. Well, I had two, but we already like talked about one of them. But my question for you,
for me,
for you to see if you have if you can pull any answers out of your brain, because I'm kind of like, what is going on here? Um, the weird website. The weird website that she found that showed a little animation of a baby falling out of the window.
Yeah.
And it said it was, what did it say? It said Brooklyn Death Houses. Who made that website? It had to be recent because her kid is the only kid who's fallen out of a window.
Yeah.
The other two died of other reasons, I think, so.
That's a good question.
Like, who made the website? Was it the cult? Was it the devil? Why would they make that website?
Was it the devil?
How did she find it so easily? What the hell?
Yeah, that's a very good question that I don't know if I have an answer to.
They could have totally just, like, made a, like, her looking up the like, apartment at the complex or something, and, like, maybe an article popped up about, like, a death or something.
Yeah.
And, like, she could have learned, because I feel like the whole point of that website was just so that she knew that other kids had died there.
Right.
But,
it was a weird way to do some exposition.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because it was never explained.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many question marks regarding this cult situation, right?
Yeah.
And that's certainly one of them. It's like, what was that website about? Did Taylor make it? Did June make it? If June's end goal was just to have the baby to give up to the devil, like, why all of this, like, almost like torture of her partner?
Mm-hmm.
When, like, you could, one could say, like, oh, maybe she didn't care for her and she just wanted to be able to give that baby away because, of the pact that she had made with the devil and all that. But at the end of the movie, she tells her, like, we have to do this. It'll be better for us,
We can have another one later.
Yeah, we can have another one later. So, like, she was still thinking, like, she was going to stay with her.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know who is torturing Leah in that way. Is it Taylor? Is it June? Like, is it Karen? Like, it's just fucking weird. It's not explained.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't really make much sense. It's like, I don't know. Very strange.
At least with another question, too, is if it is a cult, is there another, like, Taylor in all of those other buildings that is, like, bringing people there to trade their babies, their children for, like, deals?
I guess maybe that's what they were trying to get at.
But even
then, it was very vague, like, super, super vague.
Mm-hmm. A lot of assumptions, and those are deadly.
I think it was more so, like, that thing with the website and, like, the horse thing. There are all these, like, loose...
And the weird little footsteps.
The weird little footsteps?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
There was a point, there was a few times, I think while Lyle was still alive and after Lyle was dead, where she heard, I think it said, like small footsteps or something. It said, like, little footsteps.
Yeah.
And so I was assuming it's the dead kids that died there.
Yeah.
The first ones show up after she peels back the wallpaper and finds that there's little kid wallpaper, and then she's like, wait, I thought no other kids lived here before. So I don't know.
So all those things seem like,
Ghosts.
artificially implanted horror movie elements that are meant to, like, I guess, try and convince you that the story's going a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, I will say that usually when those kind of, like, I guess, devices are used, they have a resolution that ties into them and explains them.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these don't have that. And it's just really strange. I'm not really sure why she decided to include that. A little bit weird. So, aside from what we already discussed about what didn't really work about this movie, another thing I thought was just overall that the pacing was a little bit slow. And I could see at moments it was, like, meant to feel like it was building up to something. But other times it was just kind of seemed like it wasn't going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes it worked because it added to, like, this realistic view of the story, and almost like a, like, I don't want to say documentary-like, but, you know, it made it feel more real sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It made Leah feel like a more real person who's going through, like, real emotions and all that. But sometimes it just kind of detracted from where the story was going.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something that we already discussed was like how little context was given regarding the cult, and how much that took away from the final reveal, because I was still kind of too like confused in order to really be able to like suspend disbelief enough in order to be like, oh no, like the cult's so scary, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the way that it was even brought about, or the way that the idea was implanted in both Leah's head and the audience's head, was Karen mentioning it when they go take her the cake.
Yeah,
That
I was thinking of it before she even said that, but like when she straight up like not confirmed, but like said what I was already thinking, I was like at that point I was like, oh, it's Karen, but but anyway, yeah, that's how they introduce it, and then it's
yeah, that there are certainly little hints before that, but there's never a moment that is like for sure like.
mm-hmm.
She almost like looked over at the camera and went, you know, fucking. Sometimes in cults, you give away your first child. Wink, like she almost did that, and it was, I don't know, I didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like out of nowhere, and obviously like plays into the fact that you're supposed to think that she's the main suspect or whatever. She's the bad guy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it still didn't work for me. It was like a little bit too spoon fed, like spoon feeding the audience knowledge that they're supposed to have picked up by that point in the movie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Along with that, I wish that they would have shown some of the time that they spent on like showing Leah being like paranoid and suspicious and doing all this little research. While like all of that was good in the sense that um, it added to the tension, and it added to kind of like the buildup of what was going to be revealed in the end.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that they would have used some of that time in order to explain a little bit more about this cult. And like, if you were going to have Leah do research and tie some loose ends, then I wish that the pieces of information that she would have found were more meaningful
Mm-hmm.
and would have tied up better in the end. Would have had a better resolution, I should say. Because everything's a little bit like
In the air.
in the air, like, which in itself has like a certain, adds a little element of like, I don't know, it being weird or unsettling,
Mm-hmm.
because you see her like, you know, racking her brain. Her results aren't great, so like maybe that's supposed to give you like more of an unsettling feeling, like we're trying, we're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I wish that some of those clues were just like better and just led to something that was more satisfying and added to like a more satisfying resolution in the end.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially like how you were saying that we don't even technically know if it was a cult. Like we're kind of like the audience has to like kind of like make up what they think it is because it's not clear what was going on really.
I think that maybe, no shade, no tea, no shade, but maybe the filmmaker is relying a little bit on what we as an audience might already know about Rosemary's Baby. You know?
Yeah.
Especially by giving it that tagline a little bit. Like, she referred to it as Lesbian Rosemary's Baby. So, like, if I don't know anything about Lyle and I haven't seen it and I'm about to watch it, but I've heard that it is referred to as Lesbian Rosemary's Baby, then to a certain extent, I know what to expect. And that didn't really click with me until obviously after the fact, because that's when I did the research and I found that that's what she had referred to her movie as. But I mean, I say no shade because I don't mean to say that she's relying on that or that she's using it as a crutch, but it's a certain possibility that she's taking, you know, a story that's already known and that's already very popular and just kind of giving it her own spin and maybe not filling in those gaps so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been for many reasons. Like maybe she just didn't want to get into it. Maybe it has something to do with the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many factors that could have been at play as to why those things weren't explored. But at the end of the day, if I'm like judging it by, you know, on its own without realizing that it's kind of a little bit of an homage to another classic horror movie, then I will say that it was lacking in some of those aspects. That I feel like it had a lot of potential. Like I in any given moment, especially like regarding Gabby Hoffman's performance, like at any given moment I was so ready to be like super engaged and really care about what was going on, but there was always a little something that didn't sit right with me about the story and about the discoveries that she was making.
Speaking of it didn't resolve itself as much, I was thinking that this movie has sort of like the opposite of the button problem or the nice bow or whatever.
Yeah.
That I feel like it stopped too early. Like, she kills June, and then what? The guy's right outside the door. Taylor's right outside the door. She just gave birth. Like, I'm pretty sure after you just give birth, you can't walk for a certain amount of time, is what I've been told. I don't know if that's just C-sections or like, whatever, but...
I think that's true, but also it, like, that specific aspect of it could be explained away if you give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe, like, some adrenaline kicked in and she was fucking, I'm out of here, you know, because she had to protect her baby. But, I mean, I agree with you that it was a very sudden and, like, abrupt ending. I feel like, you know, I'm all for, I'm all for, like, trying to wrap up a story that, in a way that's concise, but also, like, feels like you got beginning, middle, end, like, that's, like, a full circle type of thing. And I feel like there's certainly a sweet spot that horror movies sometimes miss in the opposite way, like you said. Like, usually they go past that button, or they make the ending a little bit too neat to where it doesn't seem natural. But I haven't seen a movie in a while that does the opposite thing, where they leave you like, huh? Like, what the fuck? Like, not only was I already confused about all the other satanic cult shit, but now I'm kind of like, okay, you made me care for Leah this whole time, and I really got to, you know, see her kind of go through all these emotions and make all these discoveries, and then all of a sudden I'm left there. So I agree with you. I think it was a little bit abrupt, and I think that it could have been better. I feel like the reveal already was a little bit lackluster for me, and then I was hoping for a little bit more. You know, I was hoping for like, oh well, you know, this reveal is a little meh, but maybe we'll get to see what happens after. Maybe they'll explain some more, but then it was just like, you know.
Yeah, cut to a black screen. I was thinking while you were saying that you know what happened is that I feel like if I were to pull out my handy dandy climax, rising action, falling action graph, that the movie went like this, and it just cut to black here, and it didn't have any falling action after the climax of the movie. The climax of the movie is that she gives birth and like kills June.
Yeah.
And it doesn't show us what happened.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, I did not understand what was going on with the weird animated fetus scenes. Those were weird. I mean, they're like...
Those were weird,
Those
Danielle.
were weird. I mean, I feel like they were supposed to be like those weird like videos you watch in a biology class and you're like, this is a fetus being formed and stuff. And I was like, I wish I would have written down like more of like what happens right before those.
To see if there was any sort of
Like,
meaning or...
yeah, like a transition from this to this.
Mm-hmm.
The only things that I had was that, like, before the second time that they show it, you see Leah and June talking to the home birth lady.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess maybe it's supposed to be showing you that the baby's almost ready to be popped out.
Yeah,
Something,
I'm curious
but,
to you know, maybe upon rewatching, like, you can see that it is supposed to show you the progress of the baby cooking up in there. You know, like, I don't remember if those little clips had audio or not, or if they were saying something, or
they were saying stuff.
They were saying stuff, right?
They're saying, like, weird, like, I don't even remember now. Honestly, I think they were saying stuff about, like, at so many weeks.
Yeah, so maybe like it was a very simple purpose just to show you like how far along Leah was, you know? And make it like a little bit weird and creepy and whatnot. As far as what I did like about the movie, I will say the cinematography like itself wasn't super flashy, and there were certainly moments where like the budget showed and you could see that, you know, maybe it wasn't the most elegant framing for certain shots. But I did think that some of them stood out in a way to me that was good, like that was creative. Specifically, or like one example I should say, is when Leah and June are talking. I think it was like shortly after Lyle dies. I think they had just come back from therapy. And there's a shot from like outside the window. And it's framed in a way that shows like Leah and June talking, but like from the perspective of like outside their home window. And I thought that was really neat. I was like, yeah, that you know, that kind of like, as a viewer, it makes you like feel like you're watching something that you're not supposed to be watching. Like, this is a personal conversation, and I'm not supposed to be watching this, but I'm watching it. I thought that was neat. I thought, like I already mentioned, like the performances were great. Gabby Hoffman was amazing. I'd seen her in a few other things before, but never in a leading role like she had in this movie, and I thought she was really good. Like, she carried the entire story. Like, she made me care even though I was confused. Like, her performance was so good that I was still engaged. Oh yeah, another honorable mention as far as acting, I would say, would be the lady who plays Karen. And I didn't write down her name. I probably should have, but I'll put it right here. But yeah, she was also really good because she from the get-go was like just weird and like creepy and a little unsettling, and she played that really, really well. She kind of reminded me of a character from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and I think maybe her name was Karen too, but she was this like crazy older lady that worked at the main character's office, and she had, I think, like a collection of, not ferrets, that was the daughter. Anyway, she was just a really wacky character, and she kind of reminded me of her, but like a creepy version. So that's kind of, I wonder if it's the same actress. If it's not, then they really look alike.
I really liked the part where Karen had the big ass knife to cut this cake. She got a big ass like sword knife, and she was like, "Sit down," and she looked crazy. Yeah, and I was like, "You better sit down, if she's gonna chop you with that."
Yeah, she was good. So. She was great. I like the fact that this is directed by an LGBTQ plus female director. I think it's really important to have representation in the genre and in the community where there aren't a lot of options, and I hope that changes in the future. When we kind of like thought of doing a review for a horror movie that, you know, was directed by somebody in the LGBTQ plus community, I started like doing some research, and honestly there wasn't a lot of options, or at least not like immediately available to us, because like obviously a lot of us rely on streaming to to watch stuff, especially nowadays after COVID and everything. And so, like, we're relying on streaming services, and at least from what I could see, there wasn't a whole lot of representation of the community specifically in the horror genre. So I'm hoping in the future that that will change. Yeah. What did you like about this movie, Danielle?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Paola. So there was some really cool, like you were saying, some really cool shots and like with the camera and like camera trickery and all that.
I like that word.
I highlighted some examples that I had noted while we were watching. The first one is in the beginning, and they used this effect, I think, another time later in the movie, where June and Leah are talking, but they're not communicating with each other very well, and the whole like once the conversation like starts to tank, the screen gets like fuzzed out. It gets like out of focus.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I thought that was like meant something, or like it was like interesting and something. Like I thought about it later and I was like, okay, I think maybe this is what it was trying to convey.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. The music was really like it I don't even know how to say. It complemented the movie very well, and it was subtle, but it was like added the right type of way to feel, like kind of somber.
Atmosphere?
Yeah, it gave the right atmosphere of like sort of somber, but like also a little bit unsettling, and it stuck out to me as being like good. I don't know. I feel like a lot of other horror movies have like really cheesy like or like
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, yeah, that's true.
I wish I would have paid attention more in the beginning, but I'm pretty sure towards the end of the movie they did a shot of like the outside of the house, and I think it was daytime, and their building that they were living in looked very dark, like it was like like it was in a shadow behind something, compared to the other two buildings next to it.
Yeah.
And I think that it was supposed to be like
Ominous.
ominous, like stuff's getting real.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool, and I wonder how they did that. I guess, I don't know, you could do it in post or something maybe,
You could, or you could wait for a certain time of day.
and like splice the two together.
Yeah,
Okay.
potentially.
Interesting. And then also I just thought that Karen was a really interesting character to add into the movie. Like we said, as a fake antagonist, but she had a really like zany attitude. I don't know.
She did.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. Some of my final thoughts on this movie were that it was a good movie with the potential to be great. Like, obviously knowing that it was shot on a really tight budget allows me to kind of forgive a lot of the things, a lot of the criticisms that might have been more regarding the production or maybe even the cinematography. But I feel like that to me doesn't really excuse the fact that at times the script was a little bit shallow, and I wish it just had a little bit more to it. And I feel like certain things could have been developed further in a way that would have made the characters in the story like way more compelling without having to be, like this flashy horror movie, like Conjuring style horror movie. And I will say also, I kind of already mentioned this, but like completely independent of the movie itself and what I thought about the movie, I really admire Stuart Thorndike's approach to filmmaking. I think it's really democratizing, and it really like brings forth the conversation that filmmaking is for everyone. Like, it's not just for people who have tons and tons of money or know the right people or are already involved in the industry. Everyone or anyone who has a passion for it should feel confident enough to put their story out there, even if it's not produced in the fanciest of ways. You know, like, you don't need a huge budget or a huge studio backing you in order to just put your work out there if it's something that you feel strongly about, and just share your perspective about any given topic with the world. So I really admire that about her specifically as a filmmaker, and how she decided to bring this movie about and distribute it on her own and everything.
I agree with you there. I think that is very, as she said, that is very punk, very do-it-yourself, which is like a main thing in like punk culture. And so I admire that a lot. But yeah, I would agree also that I think that it was a good movie. It could have been better if it had been fleshed out a little longer. I don't know, maybe they had a timeline that they couldn't afford to film more than 5 days maybe, but I wish that maybe if they had a little more time, I don't know if that was the problem, but if that was the problem, I wish they would have had a little more time to maybe do another day and add some scenes after the where it cut to black, because I feel like that would have made more sense.
Yeah.
But I really did like the interesting like camera angles and effects that they did of like the focusing out and stuff like that. I thought that those were really interesting, which I think that's not always the case in horror movies. Sometimes they don't really care as much about, they focus more on like gore and like jump scares, unsettling, and then this one had more interesting stuff going on cinematography wise.
Yeah, definitely. Especially knowing that it was made with such a small budget too. I feel like that's really cool. So, Danielle, what did you rate this movie?
So I gave this movie 6.7 out of 10 applesauces in the cake. And that's something that Karen says when Leah and June come over to bring her a cake to apologize for Leah screaming out at her at June's little record label party.
Yeah.
And so she gives her the cake, and she's like, "This cake is so moist. Oh, you put applesauce in it, didn't you, dear?" And she's like,
"I really did not."
Nope. But she's like, "You put applesauce in it. And you can't tell me otherwise." So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Paola, what'd you rank this movie?
So, I ranked this movie at 7 out of 10 haunted horsies.
Oh.
Just, for what I've already mentioned, I thought it was good, but it could have been better. So that's going to be it for today's episode. Let us know what you thought of this episode or of the movie in the comments below. And if you have any movie suggestions or anything you would like to share with us, you can email us at danielleandpaola@gmail.com.
Don't forget to go ahead and follow us on Hysterrified Podcast on Instagram and our new Twitter account. It is Hysterrified Pod. And then also, if you wouldn't mind, pretty please, could you go and give us a rating on Apple Podcast app? We'd very much appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.